Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Hot Toys 1/6 scale Star Wars figure unboxing and review. Today, we're taking a look at the 2.0 version of Darth Maul with his speeder, based off his appearance in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Now I got mine at a discount from Pop Collectibles. I've popped a link to their site in the description, along with the discount code Justin's Collection, for 5% off your order if you decide to buy from them. As always, do your own research, make sure you're comfortable before buying. If you're heading down to the description, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button, so you're notified as soon as brand new Star Wars content goes live on the channel. Considering there's a speeder inside this box, I was expecting it to be a lot larger than this. It's pretty impressive that the box is as compact as it is with the speeder inside. As for the box art, up front we've got an image of Darth Maul jumping off the speeder, a metallic foil special edition sticker, then a glossy wraparound banner down below with red as the accent colour, and another image of Darth Maul and the speeder. Oh, and not to forget the droid, just hovering around there. On the side of the box, more figure photography. Just watch out for this image of Darth Maul. It's not stuck down in any way, so if you catch this on the plastic sleeve as you're sliding it back on the box, you will tear this off. Ah yes, all the boring stuff. Warnings, legal information, and their store locations. Oh, that is a sick piece of artwork. Darth Maul on his speeder, the droid, they're just zooming along across the sand dunes of Tatooine. There's Darth Maul's angry head sculpt in the background, and the red glow behind Maul absolutely fits the vibe. Now, when this guy was first announced, I didn't think I needed him, because I was really happy with DX16 Darth Maul. But that's the thing. I got DX16, not 17. Therefore, I never got the speeder. So this time round, I opted for it. This is my first time experiencing the Hot Toys Darth Maul speeder in person, and I cannot wait to get it out here. And we will do that. But not right now. We'll save it for a little bit later. We'll look at the speeder in way more detail, because it's underneath the clam tray for Darth Maul. It's going to be very tricky to get to on camera. First in-hand impressions for the figure himself. So far so good. He's heavier than I was expecting. And I can already tell that head sculpt is an upgrade. What we're going to do now is get all of his accessories, minus the speeder, laid out in the light box, and take a closer look at everything he comes with. Starting off with the display base first, you already know how much I loathe this base mold. It's not any better here with Darth Maul. There's points on either side. You can't have other figures' bases pressed up against it. And there's a point at the back so it can't sit flush with the back of your cabinet. At least it looks good. We've got Star Wars and Darth Maul for the nameplate, a removable sandy textured print for this top surface, we'll take it off in a second, a flight pole in the middle for the speeder, or you can take it out and pop the articulated flight pole arm in the middle. That way it's not randomly right at the back of the display base. It's safe to use this spring-loaded waist clamp with Darth Maul as long as you're not putting it on his cummerbund or his belts. Okay, I'll admit it looks beautiful. The print, stunning. The brushed effect for this mirror finish chrome panel, then we've got high gloss for the black, and a textured finish up front. The only complaint I have, that's not them using this base mold, is there's a peg port right there in the middle. It makes the base more versatile for the speeder, so I understand why it's there. Still, a little cover piece would have been a nice option. When it comes to head sculpts, we'll discuss these in way more detail once we pop them on the body. For now, all you need to know is we get two of them, wildly different expressions, moving eyes, and they're brand new sculpts for this release. They're not reuse. You want to know what is reuse? The probe droid. It's exactly the same as the DX16 one in terms of sculpt. Paint applications, a little bit different. The eye is more vibrant with the new one, and they've dialed down the silver metal brushed effect on the top panels versus the OG. It still has the translucent flight pole with the stand at the bottom, and it's weighted, but the droid itself is quite heavy. It tends to wobble around on the shelf. New macro binoculars, DX16 macro binoculars. Same sculpt, but way nicer paint with the new one. It genuinely looks like it's caked in sand and dirt and it's collected in the crevices. There's black and brown washes. You can feel all of that paint on the surface. It comes across gritty and textural. We've got translucent plastic on those lenses and a translucent plastic piece around the front. This is what you get when they don't know what accessory to give you as a special edition bonus. A die-cast red coin. It's fine, there's no stand for it, so how were you meant to display this? Like that? No idea. I wish they gave us stands for these. There's different colors of coins. I got red because I got mine from Hong Kong, but I believe the coins that come with Sideshow Darth Maul, they're gold. The switch out gauntlet we'll try later on. This panel is done in a super shiny metallic silver. Same thing with the lightsaber hilt. Light just gleams off the shiny surface. It looks like it's made of metal. It isn't. This is all plastic. There's a switch out cover tech wheel, a smaller one or an extended one. This you pop on there if you want to have this hanging on Darth Maul's belt. You can separate this into two pieces. Then for this end, they've included a little plug that's keyed so it only goes one way to show the severed, damaged part at the bottom. I prefer Darth Maul with the double-bladed lightsaber hilt, but if you don't, single-bladed is your go-to, you can pop that on. In terms of blades, straight edge one tapers down to a point up top, and it's all translucent red plastic. Not as vibrant as I was hoping though. The swooshing effect blade. It's an equal fan all the way down. People get confused when I say that. What kind of swooshing blade do you want, Justin? I want it to look like that. There's a curved arc behind it as though he's swinging his lightsaber, not randomly just fanning it back and forth. That's what they're suggesting he's doing with this lightsaber blade effect. At least it's more saturated on the leading edge versus the trailing one. Finally, for the lightsabers at least, a junction box with a clip on the back that connects to his belt, or you can switch it out for that C-clamp and it can connect to his flight pole instead. The lightsaber hilts themselves, double-bladed with an LED light-up function, and the single-bladed version, with the battle damage end already attached. Is it an accessory? I see this as more just part of his outfit. Either way, we get his cloak. And lastly, a full array of hands, all reused from DX16. These are his splayed out finger force push hands, macro binocular holding hands, gripping ones, finger softness check. Yeah, no problem. You can pry open the grip and pop the sabers in there easy as. Relaxed open palms already installed on him right out of the box. For being reused, the detail is surprisingly good. With the wrinkling and the leather look and the stitching and the bulkiness for the fingers as though he's wearing gloves over his actual hands. The last ones we have to look at, closed fist and some other kind of gripping hand, with a much wider grip than the ones we just looked at. What we're going to do now is get Darth Maul himself out here. Standing straight up and down in the light box, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. Except for his lightsaber hilt on his belt, I popped it there to complete the look. Oh my word, this thing is good. Is he perfect? Yeah, actually maybe he might be. There's only one thing that I think is a downgrade versus DX16. He doesn't have a magnetic head sculpt. They've gone back to a double ball peg. We'll talk about the ramifications of that a little bit later in the articulation segment. But everything else, the head sculpt, especially the head sculpt, night and day difference over DX16. The proportions, he looks so real, standing there rotating around in front of me. The outfit hugs the body perfectly, it's not too baggy and it's not too loose. Coming from someone who thought this was an unnecessary release to what I'm saying now, even I'm surprised at how good this guy is. Up close and personal, kicking things off with Darth Maul's head sculpt. I'm sorry, I don't think I can contain my excitement for just how good this head sculpt is, but it has to be one of the best head sculpts I've seen from them in a while. And that's saying something because it's black, red with Sith eyes and horns on it. Still, next to the DX16/17 sculpt, this looks like Darth Maul. This is Ray Park in the makeup from The Phantom Menace. They've done away with the ridges around the tattoos because he didn't actually have facial applications for the tattoos. It was face paint in the movie. And you can see the skin texture poking through it. The horns have the ridges around the edge, so they look like prosthetic applications. And they didn't forget about the earring. I cannot get over the sculpt work on display. The bumpiness for his bald head and the pores, the wrinkling. Then the expression. That looks like a pissed off serious Darth Maul. The red they went with is bluer in tone versus the orangey red from DX16, and I'm okay with that. This red looks bang on to me. Speaking of red, right there, inside the ear, there's a little bit of red paint. So that comes across as though on set, Ray Park had his face painted red first, then they applied the black makeup on top of it, and coverage wasn't 100% perfect. That helps this head sculpt feel even more authentic. Now there is a seam right there around the base of the head and underneath the chin. But from front on, I highly doubt that's going to jump out at you. The skin texture and skin tone or black face paint tone match between the head sculpt and the neck. They use the same exact black paint, so it's identical. And the crazy thing is, this is just the first head sculpt. The first of two, we still have to try out the angry one, and there's going to be even more detail on that sculpt because his mouth is open. But seriously, this sculpt is truly impressive. Let's move the eyes around and try out some different eye positions. Those Sith eyes, they are just popping against the dark red and black paint applications. To move his eyes, you have to remove the head sculpt. Then there's heaps of access inside of it. It's almost entirely hollow. You don't have to use the tool if you don't want to. With his eyes off to the side, dude. Let's pop this head sculpt back on the body first, then we can discuss it. That is just savage. That sculpt with the side eye. I always say this, so par for the course, I guess. Darth Maul will be rocking side eye in my collection. Eyes looking up through his furrowed brow, a very versatile sculpt. It doesn't have a crazy baked-in expression like the other ones, so depending on the eye position, you can almost modify the expression. I say almost because it's still a baked-in neutral expression, but just with a head tilt, the eyes looking down, now he looks shocked as though he's just been cut in half by Obi-Wan. Once again, side eye coming in clutch. It does wonders for this head sculpt. I personally prefer his eyes looking off to the right versus left, but still, not a bad option. Okay, back to stock. Switching out the head sculpt is pretty easy. There's a translucent neck connector instead of a magnet this time. We'll discuss that later. And once you clip it in there, it's very secure on the neck. The angry sculpt. This, a lot more expressive, quite obviously. The teeth, they look absolutely disgusting. They're covered in this brown splotchy paint app, and the teeth themselves, they're yellow. These aren't brushed very often, I would imagine. I just realized we've not spoken about the horns yet. There's darker shading on the bottom, sculpted in line work to make them look like real bones, and some lighter paint applications up top. Be careful. They are properly spiky. If you push down on them when you're trying to install the head sculpt or remove it, you're probably going to do damage to your fingers. Just take my word for it, because I have spiked myself on Darth Maul's horns previously. Which head sculpt do you prefer? The new Screaming sculpt, or the one that we got with DX16/17? I think the sculpt on the right is too large, it's too wide, and the likeness isn't coming through. But I'm curious to hear what y'all think. Oh, I am in serious trouble. Which head sculpt do I go with? This one with the side eye, or the more neutral head sculpt with the side eye? Either way, his eyes will be looking off to the side. This sculpt works very well with his eyes looking down. I struggle to make this work in poses. With this head sculpt, it might just be possible. For the sake of completeness, eyes looking off to the other side, just like what we did with the neutral head sculpt. And eyes looking up through his brow. It works well with this sculpt, I think even better with the other one. Let's switch back to the standard head sculpt, and then we can do some head swaps on previous Darth Maul releases. Which isn't going to be super straightforward, because all of the other Darth Mauls from Hot Toys, they've got magnetic neck connectors. This head sculpt, clip and double ball peg. I'm hoping that the head sculpt is narrow enough, because it is narrower than the older ones, that it'll sit on the neck with friction alone, and it's not going to be super loose and fall off all the time. Yep, called it. The neck is thicker with DX16, no magnet, but this head sculpt does actually sandwich on there quite securely. If you bump it, if there's an earthquake or something, it may fall off, but if you pose him in a stable pose and pop him on the shelf, it shouldn't go anywhere. Which is great news, because that means I can upgrade DX16, whichever head sculpt I'm not using on the new Darth Maul, I can use on this body. Oh, that is really nice, the new Serious Expression sculpt on the Clone Wars body. The red is a touch more vibrant on this body versus the head sculpt, not enough to ruin it for me. And the neck is still thick enough so that you can slide this on there and friction will hold it in place. Same thing goes for the Angry head sculpt. This will be going on my DX16 Maul. Clone Wars, he'll probably just end up with his stock head sculpt, even though I like this. I never had an issue with Crimson Dawn Darth Maul's head sculpt. He's older looking. Ray Park was older when he played this version of Maul in live action. There's scarring and wrinkling. I'm going to go with the head sculpt that comes on the body out of the box, but this is what the new one looks like. The red color match is pretty close. Surely nobody's going to do this. It's the DX16 head sculpt on the new body. I've removed the translucent plastic neck connector clip thing, and because of the lack of magnets and the size of this head sculpt, the same trick that I've been using for the other Darth Maul bodies, not applicable here. There is no friction. This slides all the way down on his neck. It's not displayable. So many snap transitions. Back to stock. Neutral head sculpt on the new Darth Maul body. Is it actually new though, the body underneath the outfit? I think parts of it are, like the neck, there's more detail on it, and the proportions look a little bit better this time. But for the most part, there's a lot of reuse on the body. It looks and feels very similar to the first version. How about the outfit? The undershirt, completely new tailoring. New fabric and new patterns. It sits lower underneath the Adam's apple, and the stitching is slightly different for the collar. The tunic on the outside, different fabric for this front piece versus the rest of it. It's lightweight and heavily textured. There's extra fabric that you can bunch up over these gauntlets. You can push this ribbed piece down into the gauntlet if that's something that you prefer. But I don't mind seeing that extra ribbing detail poking up above the gauntlets. They're PVC plastic and adjustable. You can move them around, pull them down to cover up the gap between the hand and the bottom of the gauntlet. There's a pleather wrist peg cover thing over the top of the wrist pegs. I've never been a huge fan of them. I could be wrong on this. I'm so hoping I'm not. The cummerbund and the belts, I did a smell test. They attach with Velcro around the back, by the way, underneath this panel. They reek of genuine leather. If they are real leather, that is a massive W for this version of Darth Maul over the original, because his belts were 100% made of pleather. If these little studs fall off on you, by the way, and they likely will, they give you 2 spares in the box. Try and catch them, then you can glue them back on. The CoverTech clip works well enough for the lightsaber. It's not the most secure connection, but once you attach the extended CoverTech wheel on there, you can plug the hilt in, push it down all the way, and it'll lock in place. Every single one of these panels that make up the bottom part of the tunic, the skirt down below, they're wired along the edges and the bottom, including around the back for this one and this one. So for dynamic posing, they're going to be a treat to work with. Underneath them, just straight fabric for the pants, and the thighs are pretty heavily padded. How about the boots? The same exact sculpt as the 1.0, but the paint applications, they've dialed down the weathering. There's a sandy coloured speckling effect and a wash in the detail underneath them, around the back, right there, and for the toe, but it's not overdone. With the 1.0, they were a lot more heavy-handed with the weathering. There's a few more things for us to try out, then we can move on to the speeder, and I'm itching to do that. His cloak, the LED light-up lightsaber, and the switch-out gauntlet. The gauntlet first, I guess. It's flared out up top, there's more wrinkling, still leather grain texture, but now we've got this shiny metallic silver panel on the outside. This is the gauntlet you'll want to use if you've got Darth Maul on his speeder, wearing his cloak, or controlling his probe droid. You very likely wanted to see this guy with the double-bladed lightsaber hilt with the blades in there illuminated. He does come with that, but it was bumping into the backdrop. It was hard to work with on camera, so I went with the single-bladed option. Why is the cable coming out of the lightsaber hilt up the top of it? How are you meant to hide that? Even if you angle it inwards, where is the cable going to go? Underneath his thumb from the top? I don't think so. This is a terrible choice for the placement of that cable. It should have been closer to the middle or down the bottom, then you could have threaded through his gauntlet. It connects to this junction box. I would suggest hooking this up to the flight pole versus on Darth Maul's belts because it puts a lot of pressure on this material. I've got it connected to a power bank, and once you flick the switch, you ready for it? Blink and you'll miss it. That is the LED light-up effect. Is it worth the trade-off of all of these cables and the junction box and whatnot? I don't think so. They're getting better. These base-slit hilts are brighter than they used to be, but they still can't touch custom sabers. How about in low light? Not bad. It's brightest at the bottom, dead spot right here, then it's bright again for the tip of the blade. The fusion reactors one, you ready for this? This is what it looks like. It's illuminating the entire background. That's how bright it is. It's honestly not even comparable. And the fusion reactors one only has one single very skinny braided USB-C cable that comes out of the bottom of the hilt. You don't have to worry about junction boxes and multiple cables. I don't know why it's reading more orange on camera. In person, it's very red, the Fusion Reactors one. The hilt is a little bit smaller in scale, but detail-wise, it's still impressive. And would you look at that? The cable comes out of the bottom of the hilt. It's not randomly placed up top. Enough messing around with 1/6 scale lightsabers, I think, but Fusion Reactors do have a double-bladed version of Darth Maul's saber. I just don't have that one yet. I've got the Solo movie Darth Maul lightsaber hilt, but not the Phantom Menace version. One more thing for us to try out. Okay. It's not bad, but it's also not great. Let's talk about the good stuff first. The fabric choice? Perfect. It's heavy. It drapes well. It's wired along the front edges on both sides and right there so you can shape it. These bits that hang down, they're wired. There's wires in the hood. The hood itself is an accurate shape. That looks like Darth Maul in his robe from behind. But the one bad thing that pretty much ruins this for me, there's no wire along the top of the hood, so you can't get it to sit down like this. This is how you want it to look. But his horns underneath it, and the lack of that wire, it just rides up constantly. So as much as I want to display him wearing this, I simply don't think it's a viable option for me unless I rock him without the hood on. Before this new Hot Toys Darth Maul was released, a lot of people were comparing these two head sculpts, saying that the Sideshow sculpt was superior to the Hot Toys one, and it was the best there is in 1/6 scale, in terms of capturing Ray Park's likeness as Darth Maul. I can see why. It's smaller in scale, just like this new Hot Toys head sculpt, and the likeness is very strong from almost every angle. The one thing that lets the Sideshow sculpt down is the paint applications. It's a much older head sculpt, so that's to be expected. if you were to have the one on the right redone by a professional artist, could you get more out of it? Yeah, probably. But I don't think that's necessary now that we've got the new Hot Toy sculpt. One of my biggest collecting regrets was not getting this the first time round with DX16 and 17. I opted for 16, and when I received it, I was kicking myself for not buying the speeder. Why did I do it? Well, I just didn't think I had space for it. Now that I have this thing in hand, it's compact, it's lightweight, I will make space for it in the collection. Visually speaking, there's a lot to look at on the surface. A mix of different textures and finishes, some silver dry brushing on the greebly bits, pitting, and a lot of sandy coloured weathering along the bottom. You can see that, yeah, right there. It's also textural. You can feel the grit on the surface, as though this thing has been sandblasted as Darth Maul has been zooming around on the sands of Tatooine. The screens, they're quite glossy and reflective, and they light up. There's an LED light up feature, but we'll get to that. These handlebars move in tandem. Then we've got some actual wires connected underneath the screens. The handlebars are the only things that move on this. The pedals, fixed in place. Just be careful of these struts. They feel a little bit flimsy. There's a touch of flex to them. But I love that pop of silver right there with the rusty effect and the speckling over the top. Look at the detail on these seat cushions. They come across leathery, but they're all sculpted PVC plastic. This high-fidelity leather grain texture is baked into the surface. The rounded edges help sell the cushion look. Then we've got this ribbed piece. The headrest is even done in the same way, a black wash in the texture, and a lighter dry brush, just on the high-traffic areas to make them look well-worn. It ain't a brand new speeder. Darth Maul has been riding this bad boy around for a while, even on the underside. There's a bunch of silver chipping. Now let's talk about powering the light up effect. With the original, you could open up this panel, pop in some AAA, I think, batteries, and flick the switch. But with this new version, they've changed it to USB-C. That I'm on board with. But the placement of the USB-C port has me scratching my head. Why is it here? It's a very visible spot. You're going to see the cable hanging out the back of the speeder. I would have preferred a custom powered display base. You plug the base in with USB-C, then you connect up another USB-C port inside the flight pole to the inside of this port on the underside of the speeder. That way power would have been transferred through the base to the speeder itself, and you wouldn't have had an ugly port right there on the back of the darn thing. Speaking of the back of the darn thing, those 4 green dots will light up when we connect power to the speeder, so we may as well do that. Plugging in the USB-C cable. See what I mean? It's just there. It's quite ugly, like you've got a sick Star Wars speeder, then a random cable hanging out the back of it. Maybe a fusion reactors cable, a thinner one, will be easier to work with. Flicking the switch, watch those screens. They light up. It's not the brightest light up effect in the world, but the green dots around the back, they look cool. It's a subtle one. In the cabinet, in low light, it is going to cast a red glow on Darth Maul if you've got him riding it. Then the green dots around the back, I'm going to try and position this in a way that you can see them. So after all of these years, was it worth getting the speeder? Yeah, absolutely. I adore this thing. It's so cool to look at, and with Darth Maul on it in the cabinet and the LEDs turned on, I think it's going to be a centerpiece for my episode 1 display. For a quick side-by-side comparison, this is just going to be a bunch of 1/6 scale Darth Mauls because companies keep making him. On the left, new Hot Toys Darth Maul, and on the right, DX16. DX16 is a good option. The figure on the left is exceptional. The proportions, the length of the neck, the defined traps, how the shoulders sit, the length of the legs. They've improved almost everything, not just the head sculpt. The tailoring even. The figure on the right, you could futz the outfit to get it to look closer to the one on the left if you water treated it and spent hours doing it. I didn't have to do any of that with the new one. That's how he looked right out of the box. It's the sleeves, the skirt, and the front part of the shirt that do it for me. There's still something to be said for the sideshow jewel on Naboo Darth Maul. It's got this sinister look about it. The head sculpt isn't as good as the new Hot Toys one, nor are the proportions and the tailoring. Still, I kinda like it. Ah yes, the most hated Hot Toys Darth Maul, the Clone Wars version. Not by me. I like him. He's a little bit taller than the Phantom Menace one. I chalk that up to the robotic legs. That's my headcanon as to why Clone Wars Maul is taller. Ooh, Crimson Dawn Darth Maul. I wish Solo was more successful. Then we could have seen what they had in store for us with Darth Maul as the leader of Crimson Dawn. Alas, that didn't happen. In 1/6 scale, Crimson Dawn Darth Maul is a big chonky boy. He's quite a bit taller than the new one. And lastly, the very tall Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn. In real life, Liam is 6'4". Like I said, very tall. Ray Park is 5'9", so there's a noticeable height difference. There should be. Going over articulation, starting off with his head sculpt. Seeing as though, for better or worse, they've ditched the magnetic neck connector in favor of something more traditional, a double ball peg, we are going to get less range out of the sculpt. Looking forward on the rubbery neck to there, looking up to there, nowhere near as much range as last time. Swivel and a little bit of pivot side to side. His arms will go up to there, unhindered by the fabric outfit, almost completely flushed down by his sides. There's a little bit of a gap. Going forward and back on friction joints, not ratchets. Then a butterfly at the shoulder that hinges up and down. Swivel at the bicep, double bend at the elbow, easily going past 90. Then for the wrist peg, it's a hinge and swivel. Covered by a piece of pleather. His torso crunches forward to there, restricted by the belts, going back to there, swivel, and pivot side to side. All of these skirt pieces, they're wired and they're fabric, so they will get out of our way as we move the legs forward to there, which is further than I was expecting considering the thighs are heavily padded. Going out to there on soft ratchets, that's interesting. Then a swivel at the upper thigh, double bend at the knee on ratchets, going past 90. Then for the ankles, a double ball peg and a semi-split cut boot design. You can see the seam around the side and the back, but from front on, this panel cleverly disguises it. But it will get in our way. Going forward to there, going down to there, swivel, and there's some ankle tilt. Moving on to the 3 cool and 3 annoying things. The first annoying thing is they've repeated one of the stupidest design decisions that they ever made. Pleather wrist peg covers. They limit movement at the wrists, they'll flake eventually, and they make it difficult to pop the hands on. The gap between the hand and the gauntlet is so minimal, and the wrist pegs are black anyway. I don't think these are necessary. On my DX16, I removed them, and on this new guy, I'm going to do the exact same thing. The second annoying thing is RIP magnetic neck connector. This time we've got a double ball peg and a clip mechanism. Yes, it's more secure, but we get less articulation, and that means the new head sculpts aren't entirely compatible with the older Darth Maul bodies. You all knew this was gonna happen, didn't you? The third annoying thing is the diamond base. It's too big. It doesn't need to be this big. It's got an interchangeable top plate, I like that, but that's the only thing I like about it. You could argue that it needed to be this big as a platform for the speeder to plug into. I don't believe that's the case. The speeder is lightweight, and it overhangs this base anyway. If they'd have shrunk the base down, given us a hexagon style one, popped the flight pole port in the middle of it so everything is balanced, I reckon it would have worked just as well as this base mold. The first cool thing, like I said earlier, don't quote me on this because I'm not sure, but I reckon the cummerbund and the straps on top of it making up the belts are made of genuine leather. I could be wrong, but I'm hoping that's the case because that means they're going to last a hell of a lot longer than pleather. The second cool thing, for those of you like me who thought that the new sculpts couldn't possibly be that much better than DX16/17, well, here goes Hot Toys proving us all wrong because these new heads are a significant upgrade. Speaking of upgrades, the speeder is no longer powered by batteries. I don't like the placement of the USB-C port, but being able to leave it plugged in permanently, illuminated in the collection, versus worrying about AAA batteries dying, I much prefer USB-C. Wrapping up on the new, best 1/6 scale Darth Maul. Not just by Hot Toys either. Finally, they've beaten the Sideshow one, in my opinion. They've made a ton of different Darth Maul figures, Phantom Menace with DX16/17, then Clone Wars and Solo, and now this one. They've taken every little thing that they've learnt from the previous releases and applied it here. Upgraded body, better proportions, decent articulation. The outfit is perfectly tailored, wired in every place that it needs to be for the skirt panels. Real leather for the belt, potentially. A ton of accessories. And 2 insanely good head sculpts. Some of the best work that I've ever seen from them. The only complaint I have, and this may apply to me only, the magnetic neck connector. I'm sad to see it go because yes, it wasn't as secure as a double ball peg, but it allowed for crazy range of motion out of the head sculpt, almost infinite range. This sculpt is a lot more restricted because they went back to a double ball peg. Does that ruin this figure for me? No, of course not. If you're on the fence about selling DX16 or 17 to get this one, get off the fence. Because they've made so many variants of Darth Maul, I think people skipped on this, thinking that they'll just pick up something else. Why would I upgrade a figure that I already have in the collection? Therefore, they made a limited quantity of these. Going forward, he'll be hard to find. You will be kicking yourself, just like I did last time by not picking up the speeder if you don't get this. We haven't even mentioned the speeder yet. Paint applications, they're maybe slightly better than the first version, but USB-C means that you can have it lit up in the collection permanently. I'm so happy I got this Maul, and I'm happy I sprung for the speeder. Now, I got mine at a discount from Pop Collectibles. I've popped a link to their site in the description, along with the discount code Justin's Collection, for 5% off your order if you decide to buy from them. As always, do your own research, make sure you're comfortable before buying. If you're heading down to the description, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button if you like the sound of seeing your name in the end credits of my reviews. Like, comment, and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video. Ow!